Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm super excited to be here for Spellbinders today. We're celebrating the June Club kits with a blog hop. We also want to provide you with some fun, crafty inspiration. I'm going to be creating some cards with their card kit as well as their small die of the month. So let's get into my first card. I'm going to be doing a little bit of ink blending. And one of my favorite things about their card kits is their fabulous pattern paper. It's always very beautiful, and you get a lot of it, 2 of each pattern. For this card, I chose a piece of black and white pattern paper. I thought this one would be fun to add some color to with some Distress Oxide inks. My first ink is Cracked Pistachio. I'm just putting a soft layer of that down. And my next color is Dried Marigold. I just want there to be a smooth transition between these 2 colors. So I go back and forth with the makeup brushes, trying to get a smooth blend. For this card, I'm also using the small die of the month. June's kit included these gorgeous flowers, which I cut out with some white cardstock so that I could color them in with Distress Oxide inks too. I'm coloring this flower in with some picked raspberry. I'm putting the darkest color at the bottom of this flower, and this flower is really fun because it's a layering flower. I'll show you here in just a minute how beautifully they layer up. You could add color to these die cuts, of course, with any art medium that you'd like, or even some beautiful cardstock. You get a lot of cardstock in the card kit of the month. For the stems, I'm going to use some Lucky Clover and just add a little bit of color to them. Using inks is a very fast way to color in your die cuts. And then once I'm done, I can just wipe my craft mat clean. I decided to put my masks back on and add the color a little more close to the edge. It just didn't feel balanced to me. So I'm going to blend on a little more Cracked Pistachio. These blend out very smoothly. It covers up my first line, so you can't even see it. And then a little more Dried Marigold. This really made it look a lot better. With this card today, I had a clear vision in my head of what I wanted it to look like, but it didn't look as good on paper as it did in my head, so I do add a lot to this card as I go along. My next step is to put together this beautiful flower, and I'm popping some of the pieces up with some foam tape. This really makes it look 3D, and it gives you kind of the side view of this flower. It's so pretty. Now I can put the little center in, and I'm just coloring in the center of this flower with a Copic marker. I'll put a little dot of glue down, and I'll use my tweezers so I can put the dot inside. It'll just be kind of peeking out. Isn't that beautiful? And now I can add the stems and the leaves to this. The set did come with a lot more flowers, but I'm just using this type of flower for this card. And it's just so much fun building these beautiful flowers. These cutting dies also emboss details into your die cuts. The leaves have some veins cut into them, and then you see the lines and dots on the flowers. It just looks so pretty. I'm attaching this onto my card with more liquid glue, and it's just going to go flat on the pattern paper. My sentiment comes from the card kit, and it's one of their die cut shapes. And I'm going to pop that up with some foam squares. But before I attach my sentiment, I'm using another Copic marker. I just needed to darken up the stem a little bit so that it would stand out from the Cracked Pistachio ink a little bit more. And then I decided to come in with another Copic marker for the flower. This just adds a little more contrast. I have to take off the front piece to get to the flower petal behind. But I really love how this looks. Now I can reattach that. There we go. Looks so pretty. And now for my sentiment. And this just says, "Sweet memories." I'm going to use a piece of pink cardstock behind my pattern paper to mat it. That just brings out the dark pinks of the flower. I'll attach it to a white card base using a little bit of dot liner. And I just kind of line up the corners. That seems to work for me. I usually really struggled getting them on straight. There it is. And then also from the card kit, I'm using some white sequins. These are really beautiful because they're iridescent. So here is the finished card. I had it sitting on my desk with just the pink flower, and I just didn't like how it looked. Sometimes they say less is more, but in this case, more is definitely more. I really like the addition of the 2 extra flowers. On card number 2, I'm using another beautiful piece of pattern paper from the card kit, as well as the cutting dies that came in the card kit. Everything in the kit is very well coordinated. The cutting dies cut out the exact flowers from this piece of pattern paper, so I'm going to try and match them up. For some of them, I used the cardstock from the kit, but for this fern, I'm trying to match it with a Copic marker. I didn't have the exact color of blue, but it's close enough. So I cut them out with white cardstock, and then I'm just adding some Copic markers over them. I'll do the same thing for this next leaf die cut. On the pattern paper, this part of the leaf is more greenish blue, so I'll color that in first. Then it cuts out this cute vein of the leaf. I just love this one. And that one is a little more true green. So I'll color in the veins with a different Copic marker. And it's just fast and easy to do. And then I can just pop them back inside the leaves. And it matched pretty closely with the pattern paper. You also get a really cute die that cuts out these berries. And I'm going to color in the stem brown. The 2 circles I'm coloring in with brown, and these will be the centers for my yellow flowers. This was really fun trying to recreate this pattern paper. I have a piece of white cardstock cut out to 5.5 by 4.25. I'm attaching the pattern paper to this using a little bit of dot liner. And it's not going to cover the whole panel, just a portion of it. And then I can just come in with a pair of long scissors and trim off the excess. Now I can start building my flowers, and I'm going to add them to the white portion of this panel. I'm going to build my pink flower first. I'm just using little dots of glue to do this. This particular cutting die came in 2 pieces. You cut out the outline first, and then it comes with another cutting die that cuts out all of the cute little dot detailing. I'm going to use a yellow dot for the center. Look at how perfectly it matches the pattern paper. It's so much fun. And then I have 2 more dots to add, a little white one and a pink one. And now to put the berries on this stem. It comes in 2 sections. I'm putting the light pink ones down first. This one sticks out a little bit higher than the dark pink. And then I'll add the dark pink. And look how cute that is. You see the light pink sticking out of the top. Very fast to put together too. Most of these flowers and leaves I'm going to pop up with some foam tape. And I'm trying to place them right over the flowers on the pattern paper. So it just looks like a continuation of the pattern paper in 3D. I'm adding the little brown centers to these, and then some more foam tape. I'm not going to take off the release paper just yet. I want to kind of get everything in place before I commit and attach it to the card. This is another card that after it sat on my shelf for an hour or so and I kept looking at it, I felt that something was missing, so I do add another detail off camera that you'll see at the end. Basically, I wanted to put a piece of metallic gold paper over my seam where the pattern paper meets the white cardstock, And it would have been oh so much easier to put it down before I attached all of these flowers. But I just start cutting out tiny bits of gold metallic paper and placing them across the seams that you can see. But it really adds a lot to the card. The blue ferns I'm going to attach down flat to the card, or even in some cases over the flowers. They're just too narrow to put foam tape behind. I guess you could, but you'd really have to cut out some thin slivers. And I actually do put foam tape behind my berries, but just on the berry part, behind the berries, I should say. Now that my leaves are mostly in place, I can attach my 2 yellow flowers. I really like how they line up with the leaves on the pattern paper, so they look like they're part of the flower. And then I have some of the leaves popped up with foam tape, so it looks really full and nice. I'll pop this last leaf into place, and the foam tape holds both of these pieces, the vein and the outer piece, in place. And now for my berries. They're so cute. I'm just pulling off the release paper. And as I said, I just put foam tape behind the berries, and then I'm going to use some liquid glue on the veins, and I'll just tuck this behind my red flower. I had so much fun with these cutting dies. They're just pretty. My last blue fern, I'm going to glue on over this yellow flower. And that'll give it a little bit of dimension. And I didn't put glue on the very ends of the ferns. I wanted them to kind of stick up from the card. The sentiment is also a die-cut shape from the card kit, and it says Celebrate Life. I popped it up with some foam squares. And now to attach it to a white card base. I'll press everything into place. Here is a close-up of the card. I used some white iridescent sequins, and as I mentioned before, I used some gold strips of pattern paper over the seams. I really love how bright and cheerful this card turned out. On my last card, I'm using the die cuts again from the card kit, and I'm going to turn them into stamps. And it's a very fun and easy technique to do. All you need is some fun foam, I believe it's called. You cut them out with your cutting dies. Use a little bit of dot liner behind them to attach them to your acrylic blocks and stamp away. It's so much fun to do. I'm using a piece of craft cardstock and some more Distress Oxide inks to do this. And I'm going to stamp out my biggest stamp first, just to make sure I have room for it. I always start out biggest to smallest when I stamp my own pattern paper like this. But isn't that cute? Look how it stamps out even the little dots. Next, I'm going to stamp out a mask for these flowers so I can stamp some leaves next to them. This will just help them appear as though they're behind the flower. I use Post-it note paper to do this because I can cut out several masks at a time. Saves a lot of time. And I'm just roughly cutting them out. Doesn't have to be perfect. The hard part is peeling them apart once they're all together. And I'm just going to cover up a few at a time, and then I can shift my masks as needed. I'm going to use some Lucky Clover Distress Oxide for my leaves, and I used picked raspberry for my flowers. Now I can stamp out the leaves. On the other side of this acrylic block, I put another little flower. I don't have that many acrylic blocks in my stash, so I'm using one acrylic block for double duty. Then when I'm ready for that flower, I can just flip it over and stamp out the smaller flower. But I just keep building to this pattern. Doesn't look like much now, but as you keep adding to it, it turns out to be really charming. I saved one of the itty-bitty fun foam dots so that I could stamp out some Cracks Pistachio inside these little circles. I'm just going to do this first one on camera. The others I'll stamp off camera just to save time. I'm using more dried marigold, and I really love dried marigold. This is new to my stash, and I love the pale peach color of this. Next, I'm going to stamp out the centers to my pink flowers. I'm using Vintage Photo for this. I don't get a perfect impression because I didn't put enough ink on, but I like how half of it's kind of darker than the other half. This gives it some dimension, so it worked out just fine. But you can see as I keep stamping more images over this panel, it just adds more interest to the card. I'm going to add a center to my dried marigold flowers using some white pigment ink. And this is really pale as well. I was going to stop here. These flowers were so pale, I wanted to add a little something more. I'm going to pull out the cracked pistachio again and stamp out a few more dots around the panel. And this is really pale too. But all of these additions are just cute. And then I needed something even darker, so I'm going to use one of the smallest dots. Put it on my little mini acrylic block, and I'm going to use more vintage photo for this. I was going to use picked raspberry, but I thought there was enough pink on the panel with the giant flowers. But look how cute these little brown dots look. They just add a lot to the card. So much fun. If you haven't tried this, you should give it a try. I did get some ink on this panel from my circle acrylic block. I pressed down a little too hard and there was ink on the edge of my acrylic block. But with all that's going on with this card, you can't hardly see it anymore. I'm going to use some Spellbinders hem-stitched dies to cut out this panel. This first die cuts it out to 5.5 by 4.25. And then the second die cuts out these cute hem-stitched details. And I'll just line that up on my card and use some purple tape so that it doesn't shift when I run it through my die cutting machine. You can get these hem-stitch dies in circles and squares and ovals, but I just have the rectangles. I seem to use the rectangle dies the most. Sometime I'd like to get the other ones though. Look how cute that is. And I'm just going to use the Spellbinders all-in-one tool. And you can use either end to pop out the little dots. But it just gives an added interest to your card panel. Off camera, I stamped these flowers again on a piece of white cardstock. And I chose white cardstock because I wanted to add a few more pop-out flowers at the bottom of this card. And the white flowers will stand out more than if I had stamped it on the craft cardstock. You'll see here in just a minute what I'm talking about. I'm adhering it down to a piece of peach cardstock that came from a previous kit. And then I'll use more dot liner to attach it to my white card base. You get so much paper in these card kits that they just last you forever. And now to attach the additional flowers that I stamped out. I'm just gluing the leaves on the biggest flower. And as you can see, the white cardstock just stands out a lot more than the craft cardstock flowers. I'm going to pop it up with more foam squares. I really love the look of the craft cardstock, but for these flowers, I wanted them to be the focus because they're going to kind of outline my sentiment. And I'm popping everything up with foam squares. I'm just trying to decide where to put the smaller flowers. I think that looks so pretty. My sentiment is another die cut shape, and it just says Friends Forever. And it matched really closely with the Lucky Clover ink that I used to stamp out the flowers. And this I'm actually going to glue down flat. I'll add a few more white sequins to this panel, and that is it. Thanks for joining me today, everyone. I have the links to all of the other designers who are part of this blog hop listed in the description below and over at my blog. I feel really honored to be on this blog hop with these designers. Make sure you check out their blogs. They always produce stunning projects. To celebrate the June Club Kits, Spellbinders is giving away a $50 gift certificates to 3 lucky blog hop winners selected from the comments on the blogs. Make sure you hop along for additional chances to win. The giveaway closes on Sunday, June 28th at 11:59 p.m., and then the winner will be announced in the blog hop post the following Tuesday. I'm also giving away a $25 gift certificate to Spellbinders over at my blog. I'll announce the winner on the 28th, 9 a.m. Chicago time at my blog. So here is my finished card. I always have so much fun creating with Spellbinders club kits. I'll have the links to all of these listed below as well as over at my blog. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye!